But we got to be careful that we don't make the mistake of viewing God through the lens of our own imperfect character. We are impatient and selfish, but God is incredibly patient and selfless. He loves when you ask. Your Father loves when you ask. He's not annoyed. He's delighted every time you call out to him. And in this parable, you go to their neighbor in verse 7. He says, don't bother me. My family and I are all in bed. I can't help you. In other words, go away. We're closed for the evening. You ever need help and you can't get it because everything's closed? Last week, my daughter had her first ear infection. And it's terrible as a parent, like you hate to see your kids in pain. And I was worried about her. I knew it wasn't an emergency, like go to the emergency room level serious, but I wanted to do anything I could to help her. And I started looking up urgent cares, to see if I could take her to the urgent care. Honestly, I figured she'd probably be okay, but it was more about me at this point. I would just feel better but yet they were closed. They were closed for the night. And so I text my sister-in-law who's a nurse, and she gave me the number for a nurse practitioner who makes house calls. And I text her, and she's like, give her Motrin. She'll be fine. I'll come over in the morning. And she was so sweet. She was so compassionate. But she did say, I'll come over in the morning. And if I'm being honest, I kind of wanted her to come right now. But it's too late. It's too late for that. And yet you need to understand this. Your Father is on duty 24/7, 365. He doesn't have holiday hours. He doesn't go on vacation. You would think he needs a vacation dealing with all of us, but he doesn't. He doesn't need vacation. He's always there. He doesn't have to divide his attention between you and the other billions of Christians on earth. He can hear all of us completely every time. And that's amazing to know that you can call out to him anytime, day or night. Because I've got great friends and family who would help me in a pinch, but if I call them at 1 a.m., it's going to voicemail because they're asleep. Yeah. They're just humans and they need to sleep. Yet you could wake up in the middle of the night after having a bad dream or being worried, and you could just start talking to your Father in heaven. And he's always on the line. He's always listening to you. You can just tell him whatever. In verse 4 of Psalm 121, it says, indeed, the protector of Israel does not slumber or sleep. He's always awake and watching over you and protecting you from the schemes of the enemy before you even realize there's a threat. He's providing for you before you even know you have a need. So you go over in the parable to your neighbor's house and he calls out to you and says, the door is locked for the night. The door is locked for the night. So here you are, you're banging on the door. Don't bother me. The door is locked for the night, he says. And it's like, that's frustrating, isn't it? This guy has what you need, but the door is barring you from entry. And this is an important image of how it was between you and God before you put your faith in Jesus. Before Jesus, your sin separated you from God. You could not come near to God because sin cannot come into God's presence. And we know what Jesus did. On the cross, his blood was shed for our sins, and his blood washed our sins away and made us clean in God's sight. And that's why when Jesus was on the cross, the veil in the temple that separated the Holy of Holies, where God's presence dwelt, from the common area was torn from top to bottom. Before that, only the high priest, only one person in the whole country could go into God's presence one time a year. But when Jesus died for sin, through him, we can come into God's presence all the time. He's always available. And so I want you to know, your Father is always accessible. There are no locked doors. There are no times when you cannot get access to your Father.